This is Retirement Keys with Anthony Congemi from Crescent City Retirement Group. When a part of your financial strategy is out of tune, your long-term goals, your retirement savings, and your legacy can all suffer. With many years of experience in the financial industry, Anthony provides his clients and prospects with the information they need regarding Social Security, retirement income planning, wealth management, and much more. Listen in as we address your financial concerns and provide helpful solutions to put you on the path to achieving your retirement goals. And now, here is Retirement Keys with your host, Anthony Congemi.
Welcome to another show of Retirement Keys. My name's Anthony Congemi. I have our co-host Tony Shore with us this morning, and we want to thank you all for joining us on another adventure as it relates to your retirement. We have a great show, I believe, for you this morning, and so we're looking forward to rolling it out. We thank you for tuning in. Before we get started, Tony, tell us, give us a warm welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Anthony, for that warm welcome to me. Great introduction, and I appreciate you having me on the show. I've had a great week. Looking forward to spring and another great year here. But it's been a busy time. I can't believe we're already, well into the year, and this is the presidential election year. I know you said you wanted to talk about that. I've had a great weekend, just spent some time with the family. I've been doing good. And Anthony, I'm excited about our show today because a lot of people are worried about this upcoming presidential election and how it's going to affect their finances.
Yeah, we are getting a lot of that, Tony. People are concerned that, being that this is an election year, there's a lot of, I guess, underlying concern that this could be a very volatile year because of the elections coming up. And I would say that, people, I guess, feel that way, and they may feel that there's some, they're warranted in feeling that way. But, we were talking earlier, Tony, Nationwide did a study and started looking back on election years. And I think, frankly, based on the study, I think there's some pretty interesting facts.
Well, yeah. In fact, I think a lot of people are going to be surprised. I'm curious to hear your take on this, and I know you've been reading a lot about this and looking at market history and what it's done. So where do you want to start us out? What are some of the stats our listeners should be aware of?
Sure. So Nationwide, Tony, did a survey and found that 68% of Republican investors think that the election's outcome will have an immediate and direct impact on their finances, while 57% of Democrat investors feel that way. So, a larger majority feel between Republicans and Democrats that an election year does play a significant factor in their finances. And, Tony, when you really look back and do the research, what you find is that markets have generally risen during presidential election years.
Really?
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
A lot of people would find that surprising.
Yeah, well, when you go back on it, Tony, S&P, for instance, S&P 500 has shown positive returns in 20 of the past 24 election years going back to 1928. So 20 out of the 24 have shown positive returns. Average return during those election years with the S&P 500 was 11.58%, which is higher than the S&P 500 average return of 9.81% over every year since 1928. So actually, those election years, Tony, 20 out of the 24 of the past election years, like I say, since 1928, have been not only positive, but the returns have been much better.
Yeah, and those are the presidential election years, the big one like we're in this year. So based on what you're saying there, not only should people not be worried, it's actually possibly a positive thing. And of course, we have to always say, history doesn't necessarily indicate future results, but no one has a crystal ball. But man, looking back almost 100 years since 1928, 20 out of the past 24 elections, you said, showed positive. The S&P had positive return those years. And not only was it positive, you said the average was what, around 11 or 12%. And that's
11.58.
Wow. So obviously, people let their emotions dictate what they're going to do more than they should here, I think. And the message so far is don't panic, right?
Absolutely, Tony. And, if for our listeners, if you have, listened to our show at any length of time, we've talked about investment strategies at length. And when you think of your investment strategy or your investment planning, if you will, in retirement, you know that we are really strong advocates of really these three buckets of money, if you will: liquidity, income, and growth. And so as it relates to that, liquidity or emergency money is always money that should be set aside for your liquidity needs. And those dollars should not be invested in the stock market. We believe, especially today with fixed interest rates being what they are, money market accounts, even very short-term CDs, are great places to house your liquid money. And so we solve for that. For income, Tony, that's your structured income plan in retirement. And that, again, shouldn't be subject to a whole lot of market volatility. So in other words, your Social Security, your pension, your annuities, your bond ladders, your structured income shouldn't be subject to a lot of market volatility. And then, of course, you have your growth portion of your portfolio, which certainly can be allocated toward more growth investments that are more up and down or volatile in the market. So what I'm saying is, even though we go back to 1928 and we see that 20 out of the 24 past elections were actually positive years in the S&P 500, that still doesn't take away from the fact that we should have an investment strategy that considers our liquidity needs, our income needs, and our growth needs. We really should have that investment strategy or that well-established income plan because, again, as you mentioned, we don't have a crystal ball, and any given year, any given quarter can be very volatile and dependent on what happens even around the world, not necessarily just our U.S. elections. So with that said, with an investment plan, an investment strategy, and really carving out those liquidity needs, having that structured income plan, and then having the growth strategy all separate, Tony, if there is a correction or if there is a pullback, that shouldn't derail a retirement distribution strategy if you have those three buckets in place.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a really good point, and it ties into the retirement keys that you're always talking about, right?
It really does, Tony. When we think about holistic retirement planning, it's not just what stocks we're going to invest in or what portfolio we're going to invest in. I mean, investing is certainly part of it, but in a well-rounded holistic retirement plan, you have really 5 key elements, as we've talked about: estate and legacy planning, how things are going to pass on; a good health care strategy if someone gets sick; an investment strategy, not just a growth-oriented investments, but also income-oriented and liquidity. So as we mentioned, liquidity, income, and growth are all part of an investment strategy. Then, of course, income planning is really that foundational piece. And then we can't, forget about taxes, how the tax implications are going to, how taxes infiltrate really into all aspects of a retirement plan. So, having that full, holistic, well rounded retirement plan can really, weather any storm that, short term volatility may throw at us, Tony, from year to year.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's huge. And there's going to be volatility, and usually in election years there's some volatility. There's usually ups or downs right before or after the election. But overall, you cannot let politics affect your finances, and you've got to keep them separate. I've heard a line that people's behavior, right, and their emotions can negatively affect their finances a lot more than an election can, right?
Oh, absolutely, Tony. And I think that can happen when a person is not really comfortable with their overall retirement plan, overall investment strategy, and they're just looking at really short-term either gains or losses, and then letting their emotions get the best of them. If you think about it, if someone's going to retire at 60 or 62 or even 65 years old, we run retirement plans to age 100. So you figure we're running plans out 30, 35 years in retirement. So, a third of someone's life potentially could be living in retirement. And to think that in that 30 or 35 year time horizon, there's never going to be any volatility, and there's just going to be a straight, a linear line, straight going up. I mean, obviously, that's never happened and won't happen. So there's always throughout retirement going to be those volatile times, and with the right investment strategy and the right retirement and distribution strategy, you can weather those times. But, interestingly, Tony, we all know that. But the point of the Nationwide article is that, when you go back in time, it seems that, and based on the research and just really the stats and the numbers, that over the past 20 out of the 24 elections, there's actually been these positive returns. So, if history repeats itself, conceivably this could be a good year for the market.
Yeah, true. That's true. It really could. And, people need to understand that they shouldn't go it alone, though. And if they're concerned, they need a plan in place. And if you've got a plan in place, whether there's volatility or not, whether you have an up or a down year, you'll be set if you follow those retirement keys. So, Anthony, let's take a moment to let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you and get that plan in place.
Absolutely. So a great place to start is our website at crescentcityretirement.com. All of our podcasts and different events, webinars we have coming up are right there on the website. Or you can just kind of old school, pick up the phone and give us a call, 504-828-2171. We have 15-minute retirement-ready consultations. You can call direct. We can schedule a 15-minute call, and you can get your questions answered. We can talk about your retirement and see if you are, in fact, ready. At the end of the day, people, do such a great job working and saving and paying off bills and debt and raising kids. And, at the end of it, you hope to arrive and then have a distribution strategy to where you can enjoy the fruits of your labor. And, unfortunately, a lot of people, they know they've done a good job with the accumulation phase, but now getting closer to retirement, you're actually moving into what we call the preservation and distribution phase. And you need to have a plan for that. So I would just encourage you, call our office, 504-828-2171. Schedule a 15-minute retirement ready call with me, and I'll be so looking forward to speaking with you on the phone.
Yeah. I think that's great, and let's keep the show rolling, Anthony. I think it's been a great one so far. We're looking at what the 2024 election may mean for your finances, the elections this year, and it's been a crazy one. It's like deja vu. Didn't this happen once already in 2020? We had, the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl, and it was Trump versus Biden. Do I have is it me, or have we gone back in time?
Isn't that crazy? I mean, so yeah, it's deja vu. We look like we're going to see it all over again.
Oh, boy.
And I tell you, I would just love to see us as Americans, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or a libertarian or if you may not even identify with any particular party, we're all Americans. We all work hard. We pay our taxes. We raise our families. We try to be good, citizens and serve in the capacity that we are in. And I believe we all primarily want the same things. We want security for our families. We want a good education for our kids and grandkids. We want, efficiencies in our government, regardless of what party you belong to. We're Americans, and we work hard, and we want to, see good for all. And I would love to see, more harmony and more and less division just across the board, frankly. But yes, this is deja vu, and I'm not so sure this is going to be a harmonious, election. I don't know, but we know it's coming up. But putting your plan together, this is really your, State of the Union address. It's you making sure that your finances are in order, your plan is in order. And with that, Tony, you can weather any ups and downs that the stock market may bring, or the tax code may bring, or healthcare issues that may come up in the future. It's all of these things that we, I guess, are concerned about and should be concerned about: taxes, volatility, the stock market, our health care concerns. But if you have a plan in place that addresses these issues, you really can enjoy your retirement and know that you've got your bases covered. You've got, all of your ducks in a row, if you will, Tony. We know what the issues are, and there certainly are tools available so that when and if volatility comes along, we can just ride right through that volatility, Tony. It does not have to derail our retirement, but we do have to recognize that we're not in the accumulation phase at this point. We're in a preservation and distribution phase. So that is the mind shift that has to be made. When we were working and saving and accumulating, that was one era, phase of our financial lives. But when we move into retirement, we have to recognize that we're now in this preservation and distribution phase, and we need to have a plan that complements that and recognizes that. So it's so important to have a retirement plan, have a distribution strategy. You don't want to go that alone, whether you use our firm at Crescent City or there's other retirement planning firms out there, but you don't want to go that alone.
Yeah, you need to work with a professional like yourself. You need to work with a fiduciary who's going to look out for your best interests and lay out a plan to overcome any market volatility, so you don't have to worry about it. And that's what I like, is I don't have to worry about it because I have actively managed accounts, and you and the investment firms you work with handle that. And you're looking out for your clients and their best interests, and that's what counts. And you make sure they have a balance to where their money is at. It's not all at risk. It's not all in safety. They've got a good mix so they can get growth and get some protection as they get closer to retirement. And I just think that's so important. But yet people let things like an election year, and it's so crazy because so many people think that if their candidate doesn't get in, that the market's going to crash and that they should pull their money out, right? And I mean, it's crazy because of history shows that doesn't happen. At least it hasn't in the past. So 20 of the last 24 presidential elections going back to 1928, those years have been positive. The S&P has shown a positive return. So that's pretty incredible. If you would have asked me, Anthony, before the show, before you gave us those stats, if I thought the presidential elections had a negative effect on the stock market, I would have said, oh, definitely.
Yeah, I know. Well, if you have this, selling frenzy and people get scared, they start selling. And then, of course, that creates that selling pressure.
Sure.
But again, if you've got a well-established investment strategy, you can ride through that volatility. At the end of it, Tony, when you have a structured income plan and that income is coming in every month, after taxes and insurance, you've got this base income coming in. The volatility of the stock market, your income doesn't depend on the whims or the ups and downs of the stock market. Then you've got a pretty well thought out plan. The other piece of that, of course, is liquidity. You should always be considering how much liquidity is needed in a retirement investment strategy. And so if you solve for those liquidity needs, you solve for that structured income plan, then you can really be way more confident in the growth strategy. And if the growth portfolio does have a pullback for whatever reason, that does not derail your investment strategy and your retirement plan. And that's what's important, Tony. Another a point of the nationwide study, Tony, is that they uncovered that 33% of near retirees, so people getting close, 33% of near retirees report they'll manage their own portfolios more conservatively because of what they expect to happen this November. So 33%. And then 12% of near retirees and 4% of overall investors responded that they intend to become more aggressive in the lead up to the election.
Interesting.
So that's a very interesting stats there, that 31% of near retirees say that they're going to manage their own portfolios to be more conservative, and 12% of near retirees and 4% of overall investors responded that they intend to be more aggressive. So, an investment strategy, Tony, takes all of the emotion out of it.
Yeah, a good investment strategy.
Strategy takes all of the emotion out of it. And I don't think there's, anyone that would disagree that emotional investing and emotional decisions as it relates to investing is really a good thing. It's really not. And if you get all emotionally wound up with your investments and you make emotional decisions, then invariably it's not going to work out very well.
Yeah, there you go. And I think that's the bottom line right there. Don't let your behavioral patterns and emotions dictate your finances. And that's where you come in, Anthony. That's why I want to encourage our listeners today to pick up the phone, give you a call, work with a trusted financial professional. And I'm not going to name names, but I know a guy, Anthony Kinjemi, right? Anthony Congemi is there, and you have a great staff, Anthony, and your staff and firm there, you'll work with our listeners and happily answer their questions. So before we go today, let our listeners know how they can get a hold of you.
Absolutely. Pick up the phone. Give me a call, 504-828-2171. That's 504-828-2171. Just tell one of the ladies that you heard Tony and I speaking on the radio today as it relates to the election year, and you want a 15-minute consultation. We can talk by phone, and a lot of your questions could be answered. I really hope you do. We appreciate you listening. As always, we have a great show next week. We're going to be talking about taxes as it relates to your retirement. And so don't miss that show. But please, if you have considering a retirement at some point in the future, give our office a call, 504-828-2171. We'd love to spend some time with you.
All right. Thanks, Anthony. And listeners, that does it for today's episode of Retirement Keys with our host, Anthony Congemi. Thank you for listening to Retirement Keys. Don't pay too much for taxes or retire without a sound income plan. For more information, please contact Anthony Congemi at Crescent City Retirement Group. Call 504-828-2171 or visit the website at crescentcityretirement.com.
All matters discussed during the show are for informational purposes only. Each individual situation may vary, and the opinions expressed here may not apply to everyone. Materials presented are believed to be from reliable sources, and no representations can be made as to its accuracy. All ideas and information should be discussed in detail with one of our qualified representatives prior to implementation. We are not affiliated with or endorsed by the Social Security Administration, the Federal Medicare Program, or any other government agency. Calling this number will direct you to a licensed sales agent.